Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. On Wednesday, January 15th, the Bloomington City Council hosted a deliberation meeting to discuss the organization of council committees, boards, and commissions in the new year. During the session, the council explored ways to make the various council committees more efficient. Councilmember Isak Asari suggested that they could potentially rethink or restructure the Climate Action and Resilience Committee.
I think that's probably the only one that currently we have that needs to be rethought. I certainly think there's others that we should add, but I think that's the only one that is one to consider, but not because it's I just think it's sort of past its design, if you will.
In response to Councilmember Asari's comment, Councilmember Matt Flaherty explained that when the committee was created, the city's climate action plan did not yet exist. Flaherty said that there have since been efforts to fill in the gaps beyond the committee's initial purpose.
As chair of the committee for a number of years, not all of them, Councilmember Asari's correct in that this committee was developed at the same time as a number of other standing committees in, I think, 2020. And when a lot of those committees went away, this one was retained. I think we haven't been doing a lot of referring of legislation to committees, this one included. And that was one reason at the beginning why they were created. I'll also note the context has changed quite a lot. In 2020, we did not yet have a climate action plan. The council was not participating in the sort of new climate action team that is internal to the administration. We are now with the appointee. Project 46, which is a regional cross-sectoral and intergovernmental climate collaborative, did not yet exist at that time. We didn't have a climate dashboard. And so all these things have kind of grown and addressed some of the gaps that I think the committee was trying to address, including like tracking implementation of our climate action plan, for instance, and working with staff on that. I think for reasons of, capacity, focus, maybe otherwise, it hasn't proved a particularly useful body to co-develop legislation either.
Councilmember Flaherty went on to say that the City Council could consider dissolving the Climate Action Resilience Committee.
There's just a lot that has changed since the committee started. I think most of those are proving more suitable avenues for working on the things that the committee was created to work on. So for that reason, I've been leaning towards dissolving that committee. But again, that's just my opinion as someone who cares very much about this issue and has chaired the committee for some years. We have not yet discussed it at length as a committee in the committee setting to make a recommendation.
Flaherty did discuss a potential replacement for the Climate Action Resilience Committee, including the anticipated development of a transportation commission.
One additional note I'll mention is the, I think, anticipated development of a transportation commission very soon. Mm-hmm. The two biggest emission sectors in city governments are in our built environments and energy, and then in the transportation sector. The two chapters in the Climate Action Plan with the most actions, the most focus, I think a transportation commission. I've been intentional in bringing amendments for that to really make sure that sustainability is a integral part of the values framework informing that committee's work. I think that's probably the best place to work on and advance the transportation-related dimensions of the Climate Action Plan.
Councilmember Rallo agreed with the idea of dissolving the Climate Action and Resilience Committee, adding that a broader ad hoc resilience committee could be formed. In addition, he mentioned the need for council involvement in emergency management in the wake of the recent wildfires in California.
Perhaps have a resilience ad hoc committee that would meet when needed. Maybe expand the idea of resilience, not just to climate mitigation or climate adaptation, but resilience in terms of things like, as you're watching, I'm sure, the fires in Los Angeles County. It's obviously very a complicated situation, but there seems to have been a disconnect there between officials and the needs of the community. And it concerns me that, in my memory, I haven't had a presentation regarding emergency management in at least a decade, I think. I know that this is generally in the hands of the county government. However, maybe it's something that we might want to consider to be informed, aware of emergency management plans, aware of the potential threats, awareness of funding needs, vulnerabilities, things like that. So it's got me thinking about resiliency of the community and our role in it, and we should have a role.
During the public comment portion of the meeting, Director of Advocacy and Public Policy for the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce, Christopher M.G., expressed concern for the Council's long-term perspective on budgetary responsibilities, saying it could be more efficient for the Council to adopt a committee to address budget conversations.
I don't think some of the council members know what they don't know, and so it becomes this sort of muddling through process where we don't even have a good sense of where we are fiscally in the city. So usually the mayor has its budget and the council members want a little bit more. And fiscally, you looked at this year, you're like, well, we're going into the reserve this much, and we have this long-term commitments to these salary increases. Where are we at fiscally? And I think sort of a committee that kind of learns some of that long-term, looking at the fiscal outlook for the city is where we need to go. So maybe before we sometimes go to some of these other sort of budgetary things that I think the council is looking for.
Overall, MG said that he was optimistic about the council's deliberations and their effectiveness moving forward.
I think it gives you an option to just have a long deliberation between the next regular session, because these schedules are made ahead of time. You can get some of that done in that time, because what ends up happening is these meetings, I don't know if you know, they can go long and then go longer. And so if you have this option to go into that and just sort of deliberate on some of these things, it does sort of make those next regular sessions maybe not the marathons that I don't think do you or the public any service.
Former City Councilman Steve Volin gave public comment, saying that he was happy to finally see concerns over which committees should be restructured.
Tonight's agenda is the conversation that I tried to have, that council should have had in January 2020. But I was pilloried by hostile department heads and colleagues afraid of change for proposing this document, which is in the January 8th, 2020 packet. I'm very pleased to see the discussion be taken seriously at last. Everything you've talked about tonight was contemplated by this memo from January 8th, 2020, how the legislative process ought to work, what kinds of committees the council ought to consider having, time limits. How do committees add value? What purpose should they serve? They let members specialize, and that's what will let council get more done. And there is a lot to do if you're not digging into transaction level budget data so that you know everything a department spends money on. If you don't have members specializing in topics, you're not being serious about your jobs. Instead of an ad hoc salary committee, just have, whenever an opening comes up, just have a standing administration committee. Roll council processes into it.
The Bloomington City Council will meet for its first regular session of the year on January 22nd. The Bloomington Board of Public Works met on January 14th. Vice President of the board, Elizabeth Karen, thanked the Public Works Department for its snow removal efforts in the aftermath of the recent snowstorm that hit the city and surrounding areas.
I'd just like to say thank you, Adam, to you and your teams for keeping everybody safe and roads cleared. I know we've had a lot of snow in the last 10 days or so, so many, many thanks to the PW crews.
Later, Special Projects Manager for the city, Chaz Mottinger, provided an overview of the 2025 Outdoor Dining Agreement.
So we are presenting the 2025 guidelines for the Outdoor Dining Parklet program. A resolution for you guys. And so what's happening is next Wednesday, council is going to vote on the ordinance for the outdoor dining. We are recommending a parklet program. And so we wanted to make sure when we go in front of council that the Board of Public Works is okay with the guidelines, because the code has to be changed. That needs to be approved because we're going to be using parking spaces, as extended outdoor dining facilities for restaurants in the downtown area. So we just want to make sure that all is well with that when we present to council, which is why we're coming to you first before council. But this is in a form of a resolution that has the dates and all of the implementation logistics for 2025.
Public Works Director Adam Wason expanded on the resolution. Mottinger added that the new outdoor dining agreement enhances ADA requirements for restaurants to follow.
We did a 3-year program here just to offer some consistency. What is in this is very similar to what occurred last year. Those restaurants in the downtown area in the metered parking zones are going to be eligible to apply for a parklet. So the outdoor dining that just uses the parking spaces adjacent to their front door of their business. So an extension of that for the next several years as we look to further study Kirkwood as a corridor with several other city departments.
Yes. So yeah, the ordinance is we're presenting an ordinance for 3 years, as Adam said, that's all correct, so. And I will say the only changes are we have some better ADA requirements that people must follow, so not really much of a change except for making sure we're very clear on what ramp sizes need to be and all of that. So those are good changes.
Karen asked how the resolution before the Board of Public Works relates to the ordinance that the City Council will hear. Mottinger explained that the City Council ordinance contains fewer specific guidelines.
I just wanted to make sure we had the active conversation about what was coming in front of this board, I guess in conjunction with or vis-a-vis what's going to council next week. I assume the resolution that we have in front of us tonight is part of or connected to the ordinance that City Council will get, or what's the connection between the resolution and the ordinance?
Yes, so the ordinance is a little more bare bones than this resolution. It doesn't have the guidelines in it, and that is because the dates will change every year. So I'll try to explain. We are recommended by legal to do it this way, to have you guys do the resolution first. It is in the ordinance, and it says that if you guys do approve this and council approves it next year, it is written in the ordinance that the guidelines were approved by you on a yearly basis. Why that is because since this is a 3-year ordinance, the dates will change. We can't necessarily in the ordinance put what the dates are for the next 3 years because they could change. We want to have that flexibility in case something happens where we have to have a shorter season or a longer season. So our plan would be to come back to you at the end of this year for 2026 and present the guidelines again, just in case there's any changes. We foresee probably no changes, but the dates would definitely change. So we need that flexibility to be able to implement the program efficiently, which is why we're doing it this way, if that makes sense.
Wason clarified that the council votes on the outdoor dining program more conceptually, while the Board of Public Works goes into more detail.
The way this has worked historically is the council approves the outdoor dining program as a concept. The Board of Public Works approves the nuts and bolts of how it actually gets implemented and such. So they approve the program, you approve the guidelines. We plan to come back to you folks each year with an update of the guidelines. So, like Chaz mentioned this year, we would included language that increased the responsibility of the parklet users for ADA compliance and making sure it's accessible. So each year leading into that outdoor dining season, we'll bring in a resolution in front of you that has the actual guidelines, the specifics of the application period, what the cost is, what the dates, the duration, where the locations are, et cetera. So yours is more of the actual specifics, whereas the council is the general program.
Board President Kyla Cox-Deckard asked for another legal clarification relating to the beautification guidelines for the outdoor dining program.
In the beautification options, I'm assuming that the restaurants participating in the program are getting approval for these items, and that the art is considered city-related art.
Yes, so Yes, they have to approve. The city art has historically with the program, we've put public art banners that the city does and
That were
approves.
commissioned by, like, the
Yes,
city.
yes, so the city commission, so that is the art
Authorized it.
on there. This is actually beautifications right now. We're actually working on what the barriers could be and maybe some better platforms for the parklets. So we're still kind of figuring that out, but yeah, any art would come from the city, and if they had any art, that would be a whole other thing. But this is just mostly for greenery and to make it look a little bit prettier, if that makes sense. So
The Board of Public Works approved the resolution of the outdoor dining program unanimously. President Trent Deckard began the January 14th Monroe County Council meeting by welcoming newly elected council member David Henry. Henry previously served as chair for the Monroe County Democrats and has been a part of the teaching faculty for Indiana University. Next, due to council member Cheryl Munson's death last month, President Deckard made additions to the agenda. One of them was to appoint county council members to various boards and commissions, since the council is still looking for someone to fill Councilor Munson's vacant seat.
I just want to make a note for the public watching this. The reason that we're adding an item for certain county council members to be appointed to certain boards and commissions and not doing the full slate as we normally would do is because we are still minus one council member. We will have one new council member. And we want to have that new council member come here for a very public spirited discussion on, maybe not so spirited, I don't know, but January 28th to talk about those liaison appointments and to weigh in whichever way they wish to serve for that year. So we'll do a full slate of those at that time and have a fuller discussion. However, some boards and commissions need people in seats right now for quorum purposes and for making things happen. And so we'll do that at that time. I will also note that if there is, with the liaison, since we're holding some back, if a department head or an elected official needs something in the meantime, please do not hesitate to reach out to council leadership. Let us know. Grab your favorite member that's your non-liaison, maybe if they're not here, or your existing liaison if they're still in office. Okay, we'll get through it just a little bit longer here.
During public comment, Christopher M.G. from the Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce highlighted the expansion plan for the Monroe County Airport in the 2025 legislative agenda.
We did add one item that I want to just bring to your attention that was really made a point in our advocacy council, which is the support for the expansion of the Monroe County Airport, which we are big partners with Carlos and the work he does there. So anything that comes that we can help out on that, or any migrative issues that comes before this body, please let us know. The chamber sees ourselves as a partner in this community. We want to help any way we can, and I appreciate your time today.
Next, Council Member Jennifer Crossley was nominated for the position of Council President since Councilor Deckard had decided not to seek another term. Councilor Kate Wiltz said that she is especially excited to nominate Councilor Crossley and feels that she can shoulder the weight of the position. Councilor Peter Iverson said that he seconded the nomination because of Crossley's extended experience working alongside many of the departments that are affected by the council's decisions. Councilor Henry said that while he has only been on the council for a total of 17 minutes, he has worked with Councilor Crossley in the past and knows that she will be great for the role.
I would only add that as I'm only 17 minutes into my term here with all of you, that I've had the good fortune of working with Jennifer in leadership in a very different capacity in our community, and I have no doubt of your ability to lead an organization, and look forward to your chairpersonship or your presidency of our council today. Thank you.
Councilor Iverson was then nominated for President pro tempore. Councilor Wiltz said Iverson would be the obvious choice, and Councilor Crossley said that she believes he's built for the role with President Deckard backing her up.
I'll just say I'm exceedingly excited to see you come officially into council leadership. Your energy and your stamina for it and your ideas. Sort of as I was president this year, we're sort of what do you call it, metronome? Mm-hmm. It was to say we got to keep up on this and do this and got to do that. And I appreciate that because we need that fresh eyes, fresh energy. And I'm excited to see you do that from a different vantage point. I know it's going to be awesome.
Later, financial coordinator for the Sheriff's Office, Jordan Miller, presented a request for a new budget line within their pre-existing supplies category and an additional approval of $50,000 in appropriation. The additional funds would be used for ammunition and other training supplies. Councillor Iverson said that he understands the additional account line, but questioned the amount of money requested, saying that they have already been provided with a sizable amount. Councillor Wiltz agreed.
I think this is a similar question, so you might not have the answer, and maybe the auditor has an answer, but because you mentioned you had been in discussion, but it does seem like we just appropriated money for training supplies in your last budget, and that included ammunition, which is listed here. So I guess I'm curious as to why in January this is coming before us. Typically, I mean, I know it's not like we can't fund more things, but I felt like we kind of put to bed your needs for 2025 with the last budget. So is there a reason that there's an additional appropriation needed right now instead of a transfer from maybe what we intended to be in this category?
And again, I'm unfortunately filling in, but we did reach out to members of council, and maybe Ms. Schell can speak to this, but associating the additional appropriation, given the fact that, like I said, in previous years, my understanding is that Fund 1156, we received funding for this, and we're able to move expenses accordingly based on a need. And then in it's my understanding that recent changes have been made that require us to move funds to various account lines based on a need. I came to you in one of the recent meetings, and of course we had approximately, I believe it was a little over $10,000 worth of expenses for ammunition and training supplies. And we had been, that was a portion of the year based on previous financial reports and budgets. I'm under the impression that $50,000 was the approximate need within that line.
Auditor Breanne Gregory vouched for the request and stated that while she knows adding a category to the line was meant to show transparency, there seems to be confusion surrounding the need for additional funds instead of the department doing its own in-house transfer. She said that she would speak with her team and get clarity on the request. Finally, Highway Director Lisa Ridge made a request for a new stormwater technician account line and approval for an additional $84,752 in their personnel category. Councilors Iverson and Deckard expressed their gratitude for Ridge's hard work and the Stormwater Board's dedication to the county.
I just want to, this is the only item I think we have of yours before us, and I want to say while you're here, not necessarily on stormwater, but I have a comment on that in just a second, but I want to thank you for everything that your folks have done on our roads in the last feels like 23 weeks, that this has been one of those white Januaries that is a little bit more profound. And I know that there's a lot of stress and headaches that every one of your persons, especially you, takes to bed with you and up in your mornings and every text message that comes in. And I just want to say I appreciate that very much. In addition to all those things that you manage, and this gets into the stormwater, you also manage the hiring of people and then emergencies and all this stuff. And that's a lot, Lisa Ridge. And I just want to say that doesn't get unnoticed by people. I also want to say to the people in the community, sometimes I think if we got rid of Facebook and other social media, there might not be as much crying as we think. Sometimes I watch comments on road conditions, and I think people are looking for something from the divine and not necessarily something with a plow in front of it. Folks, you got to be careful out there. I mean, these are good folks doing talented things, but they cannot literally make a miracle happen at 1 a.m. out on a lonely country road with only a barbed wire fence to the right and maybe a couple fleeing cows to the left. Folks, be reasonable with our teams out there, and let's make their job as easy as possible. And I sometimes look at Facebook comments and I think, now, did you all talk like that at home? in front of your mom or whoever. So I would just thank you very much for all of that, because I know it's a lot. And I know that you act like it's not a lot, but it's not unseen. And thanks for all that, Lisa.
Ridge replied, saying that the county has not had a winter storm like this in years. January is not over yet, but if the material and labor are added up, the 2 storms already cost the department $500,000 in 6 days.
It makes me nervous moving forward on what the rest of the winter is going to be, but we will continue to do our best. I think the biggest complaint we have is about subdivisions. Those are not our top priority. Our main roads have to be our priority until we can get to subdivision roads. But our guys are working long hours. If they've put snow in front of a driveway, they didn't do it on purpose. I answered the phone for dispatch a few times. I don't know how our dispatcher does it. I honestly don't. Took a lot of yellings. I took a lot of cussings, and he does on a daily basis. It's tough, but the guys do a great job, and I think they did the best with what they had, and I couldn't commend them more than for what they did.
The County Council will meet again for its next regular session on Tuesday, January 28th. At their meeting on January 14th, the Ellettsville Town Council elected Scott Oldham as board president and Dan Swafford as vice president. The board then heard a motion to change Chapter 53 of the Ellettsville Town Code to match current Indiana stormwater ordinances.
The state of Indiana has changed its requirements to require local MS4s to enforce stormwater ordinances, and the town was required to pass a stormwater ordinance, which it did at the last meeting. And this is sort of part 2 of that, which is a new chapter that will be in the Indiana or the Ellettsville Town Code with regard to illicit discharge in connection to the stormwater drainage system.
The motion was approved. The council then paid their respects to Herbert Ray, who passed away in early January. Ray served on the Ellettsville Town Council for 15 years and on the Ellettsville Fire Department for over 20 years. Utilities Director Jeff Farmer commended him for his dedication to the town.
Herb was one of those guys. He was, he was, one of the guys that you would call Mr. Ellettsville.
Councilman William Ellis closed the meeting, reminding everyone that the hearings for HB 1080 have started. If the bill passes the Indiana General Assembly, it will allow Ellettsville to control the funds collected by the town's food and beverage tax. Control of those funds is currently the responsibility of the Monroe County government. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.